A church is meant to be a sanctuary, a place of prayer, silence, candlelight. But in medieval Europe, some of the holiest buildings became something else entirely. They became fortresses. Imagine kneeling beneath stained glass, while above you archers take position behind stone parapets. Imagine a bell tower not only calling the faithful to worship, but warning of an approaching army. It sounds like a contradiction, almost a betrayal of sacred space. And yet, from the towering defences of Albi Cathedral to the fortified walls of Visby Cathedral, churches were deliberately designed or transformed to withstand siege. Why would houses of God become engines of war? The answer lies in fear, survival, and a brutal reality, where villages had no castles, no standing armies, and nowhere else to run. In times of invasion, the strongest building in town was often the church, and so sacred architecture evolved. Behind carved saints and soaring arches hid loopholes, battlements, and thickened walls. This is the story of when faith met warfare, and how stone sanctuaries became the last line of defence. To understand this transformation, you have to step into the instability of the Middle Ages. After the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, Europe fractured into rival kingdoms, feuding nobles and shifting borders. Raids were common. In coastal regions, Viking longships appeared without warning. In Central Europe, rival lords burned villages to assert dominance. Ordinary people had little protection. Castles were expensive and usually reserved for nobles, but every community had a church. By the 10th and 11th centuries, builders began reinforcing them. In parts of southern France and the Baltic, entire churches were constructed with military intent from the start. Consider the massive brick bulk of Albi Cathedral, whose fortress-like exterior reflects tensions during the Albigensian Crusade. In the Baltic island town of Visby, churches doubled as defensive towers against maritime threats. These were not accidents. Communities invested in thick masonry, narrow windows, and elevated entrances. Religion and survival intertwined. The church was not only a spiritual centre, it was the safest stone structure in miles, built to last for eternity, and increasingly built to endure attack. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. So, how exactly does a church become a fortress without losing its identity? Imagine starting with the walls. Builders thickened them dramatically, sometimes over 2 meters wide, using rubble cores sandwiched between cut stone. This mass absorbed impact from siege engines. Then came the windows. Instead of large openings at ground level, they were narrowed into slits, wide on the inside, tight on the outside, perfect for archers. You know those tall bell towers? They became watchtowers. From that height, defenders could see smoke from miles away. Parapets were added along roof lines, sometimes hidden behind decorative cornices. In emergencies, wooden hoardings could be mounted, creating overhanging platforms to drop stones or boiling water. Inside, spiral staircases were designed clockwise, so right-handed defenders had more room to swing weapons downward. Even the heavy oak doors were reinforced with iron bands. And here is the subtle genius. Because churches were already built of durable stone and positioned at the centre of town, converting them required adaptation rather than total reconstruction. They were sacred shells with hidden teeth. The architecture of devotion quietly became architecture of resistance. It may feel distant, this blending of sanctuary and stronghold, but the principle remains powerful. Medieval communities understood adaptive reuse long before it became an architectural trend. They did not separate beauty from function. They layered it, Today, when cities design schools that double as storm shelters or public buildings that can serve during disasters, they echo this mindset. The lesson is resilience through dual-purpose design. If you imagine a modern crisis, whether natural disaster or infrastructure failure, the strongest communal building often becomes a refuge. Medieval builders anticipated that need. They reinforced their central structures because they knew threats were unpredictable. There is also a psychological lesson. Turning a church into a fortress did not erase its sacred meaning. Instead, it expanded it. Protection became part of devotion. In modern life, we often divide roles sharply. This building is for one purpose only. Yet, the medieval example shows that flexibility can mean survival. Designing spaces that can adapt, that can shift from peaceful to protective, from ordinary to extraordinary, is not paranoia. It is preparation shaped by history. It may feel distant, this blending of sanctuary and stronghold, but the principle remains powerful. Medieval communities understood adaptive reuse long before it became an architectural trend. They did not separate beauty from function. They layered it. Today, when cities design schools that double as storm shelters or public buildings that can serve during disasters, they echo this mindset. The lesson is resilience through dual-purpose design. If you imagine a modern crisis, whether natural disaster or infrastructure failure, the strongest communal building often becomes a refuge. Medieval builders anticipated that need. When you stand before a fortified church today, its stone walls warm in the sun, it is easy to admire the artistry and miss the anxiety that shaped it. Behind every narrow window was a memory of invasion. Behind every reinforced door was a community that once huddled together, praying while listening for battering rams. These structures remind us that faith and fear coexisted, that survival sometimes required transforming the sacred into the strategic. And yet they also tell a hopeful story. People did not abandon their churches when danger came. They strengthened them. They trusted that the heart of their community could protect both body and spirit. In a world that still faces uncertainty, that lesson resonates. Build strong foundations. Design with flexibility. Protect what matters most. The medieval fortress church stands as proof that architecture can embody both belief and bravery. If this hidden chapter of history changed how you see those quiet stone towers on the horizon, imagine what other stories are carved into their walls. Stay curious, keep exploring, and let the past sharpen how you prepare for the future. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned